Hi, welcome to Coffee and Closers. I'm Nikolai Bedore, and I want to personally invite you to join me and one of today's top performing sales stars for a cup of coffee and authentic conversation. And our collective goal is that you will walk away with tangible knowledge that you can apply to your sales efforts today. Are you ready? We'll grab a cup, fill it up. Let's get into another episode of Coffee and Closers. What's up, closers? Welcome to episode 3, season 5 of Coffee and Closers. This is an extremely timely episode as it's the last episode of 2021, aka budget and planning for 2022 season. And nobody knows this more than our guest today. But first, I want to thank our closers community for your continued support through this whole year, your continued support today, and for making all of those that join us, the new folks that join us, welcome. So if you're joining live, please make sure to say hi in the chat. For those of you who I have not met, my name is Nikolai Bedore, the Chief Revenue Officer of Closers Media and the host of Coffee and Closers. So what does Closers Media do? Well, we help businesses by teaching them how to sell, how to turn their leads into happy, paying customers. And to date, our clients have leveraged the system to be acquired, IPO, and to grow their team by receiving investment dollars on their turns. So if revenue growth is a top priority for you in 2022, hit me up at Nikolai@closersmedia.com for more. Okay, back to the show. In this season's past, we interviewed fellow sales experts. You know that, but realized we were focusing too much on the solve and not the problem. So we listened to your feedback and committed to dedicating this season to helping real business leaders overcome real issues that they're facing today. With that, today's guest, Andy Schornack, sells money. What? Well, let me clarify before you get all spicy. Andy's the CEO of Flagship Banks, a 6-bank chain located in the Midwest, and a true partner to many business owners like myself. In fact, I am a very happy paying customer for Flagship. He also helps a ton of other banks around the Midwest, as he also serves as the president of Security Bank and Trust. So why would I have him on the show? That's fair. That's fair. Because the livelihood of his empire depends on him making sound investments, maybe in a business like yours. So what makes a sound investment? We're going to find out more, but we all know it's cash flow. So how does one create cash flow? You guessed it, a sale of one's product or service. So with 2022 a month away and next year's forecasting budgeting on everybody's minds, we decided to bring in the closer to close out this year in style. Closers, please give a warm welcome to this month's guest, Andy Schornack. How was that? Did I do it?
Yeah, that's great.
Did you like that? Did you ever think you'd be at a sales show?
That's great. Thanks for having me. Right?
Yeah, I bet when you woke up on January 1st of 2021, you thought, man, I hope I end the year by being on a sales show, right? Is that your dream?
Exactly.
Well, you made it, partner. You made it. So tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got here.
No, it's great. Thanks for the introduction. Really appreciate it. I got to the bank. I grew up in northern Minnesota, so in a rural community and a family of entrepreneurs, and I got into banking, and I found that it was a really good mesh for me. I really enjoy small business. I enjoy finance, and what better job than to deal with small business owners and financing their dreams. I mean, it's kind of a cool aspect of what I do, and it's kind of where I get enjoyment. So, kind of learned my way through going to Carlson here locally, and then getting the MBA at St. Thomas, that that was a good fit with my skill sets. And I've just been fortunate to be in a strong community like we have here in the Twin Cities, with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people growing and building. And so it's been exciting from my standpoint to be a part of that, and to do it through our bank, and to really try to find new and innovative ways to help people grow their companies and provide that sound advice and support as they're looking at, okay, what are they going to do next? But also, what have they done over the last year? Maybe, what things maybe could have they done better, or what are other people doing? Is always a fun conversation.
Yeah, man. I mean, you guys do great work. It's always personal. It's nice to call in and have a human being, instead of have to press a bunch of numbers and just get a voicemail, end up in a voicemail anyway, like CVS or something like that. Anyway, so unless you're Scrooge McDuck, every small business needs a partnership. I think, someone like you in their corner. So for those listening, those folks on the fence that are looking to secure capital for next year, could you just not assuming anyone's ever taken out a commercial loan, but could you walk us through, what you look for, what's important, what's required for you to inspire to write them a check?
Yeah, I think the main thing to start with is just what's the difference, kind of a community bank, which is what we are, relationship business, from the larger banks. And one of the things that I look at is part of the application process is, understanding how much you need or want, and then, fine tuning it from there. But, you're going to need your tax returns to be completed and up to date. You're going to want to have some interim financial statements. And you're going to want to have a story, just like any pitch. You want to have a story about what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, and then here's the financials for how you're going to get there. And if you put that in a nice organized fashion, you're going to have a much higher likelihood of being able to get a loan. And a lot of it is, starting with your community bank, generally because they'll get to know you. So that first loan might take a little bit longer because you're going to go through the process of getting to know your bank and your banker. But then when you have follow-on requests, it goes a lot faster, and that process just kind of speeds up, and you can kind of spend less time on the story and more time on the business, because we understand that the finances is what juices the wheel, I guess. But you guys are what gets it done and really what grows the business. So we want to let you get back to the operations and try to make the financing as effective as possible. So when you come in with a commercial application, current tax returns, current financial statements, and kind of organize the story of what you're looking to buy, why, and how that might make an impact on your business, generally it gets you started real quick.
Yeah. So I kind of want to take that a little bit, deeper, as far as, we talked about planning and we talked about cash flow and all this kind of thing. So we can kind of go different ways, but as someone who's listening to this, what are the top things that businesses should be thinking about right now while planning for 2022? Because I know that you've probably seen a lot, maybe you've seen a lot of activity. Maybe this is the time when people flood your inbox with requests, but what are you seeing that businesses are focusing on? What should they be focusing on in regards to your world?
Well, 2022 is going to be very interesting, right? So the last several years, or even the last decade, inflation has been an item that hasn't been an event that's worth noting. We're sitting at a situation now where you've got wage. Everybody's having wage problems, right? In terms of making sure they've got people, making sure that they're taking care of the people they have. So you try to, not only plan for 2022 in terms of what sales and kind of pipeline you're going to have, but also to make sure that you've got the people you need to meet the demand, right? Because if you don't have the people, you can't fulfill the sales and make sure the service gets. And that's kind of pivoted a little bit from what some of the concentrations have been in the past. The other part is supply chain. So as you're ordering goods, if you're in software, you might not be. It's a lot easier to meet supply needs. But say you're selling a widget of some sort that has to get supplied from outside. So, if you're a manufacturer of sorts or a drop shipper, or, you're bringing things into China, you might have more money lined up in working capital than you might otherwise had in the past. Okay. So you want to make sure you've got a larger line of credit going into this year to make sure you can meet your sales, because you're going to have more money tied up in inventory, because you're going to have to order more earlier. So you might have, we've got clothing people already ordering for next fall, making sure that they've got their orders in place. And, it's pretty long sales cycle right now. And you got to put a lot of money up front to make sure that things are getting manufactured. So that's one item that probably hasn't been as big of a topic in the past. So I know there's plenty of our clients that have been really concerned about working capital going into 2022. Labor is obviously a big thought process, inflation, kind of looking at that whole idea of, okay, 6.2% on the CPI here in November. At the end of this week, the CPI is going to come out for I guess, November's reading was for October, and the new one will here be for November. And the consensus, according to Barron's, is 6.7% inflation year over year. Now, those are some real numbers And it really impacts, okay, what should I be doing? What should I be planning for? How should I be pricing my goods and services? One of the big things is input costs are rising. Are you pricing for the service you're providing? I heard from a person here recently where, they're doing the nice thing about kind of planning on their pricing, and people are loading up early, before the price rate rises, and it ended up squeezing them because they paid more to fulfill the orders, but they didn't price until after. So just making sure you're pricing your things correctly and thinking about, okay, what kind of jump do I need to maintain margins? What kind of input costs are going to be going up, wages, supply chain, how can I get from A to B to C? There's a lot more moving parts this year, I would say, than prior years.
Crazy. So you brought up sales a couple times, which makes my nose tickle because this is a sales show. I'm a salesman. We run a sales company. So in regards to cash flow, so it sounds like there's two things that maybe we can unpack a little bit is the war for talent, paying people, the right people, sales. You mentioned it 6 times in that last answer. So you said it at a I don't know if it's because you're on the show and you're looking at me or subliminally. So it's very important. Supply chain and talent. Those are, not enough product, but since we don't have a show on that. I'd love to unpack talent and I'd love to unpack cash flow, the importance of it in regards to what makes a good, investment. I'm guessing the ability for someone, the lender to be able to pay the loan off eventually. Right. We had, Reed Robinson, he's the CEO of Groove Capital. He's a PC. He said in last month's episode, he said he would not invest in a company that didn't have sales figured out. How important is sound sales performance to you guys when you're looking to make an investment?
But for our business, you have to have sales before you can get qualified for a bank, right? So, Reed's on the first check front, where he's wanting people to get up and to get started, and then we want to see them up and started and running, and then on either at profitability or in the process of transitioning to profitability before they're financeable. In generally speaking, right, there's always circumstances for everything, but what you want to see is consistent sales over time and then sales growth. So we want to see sales kind of moving forward and up to the right, just like everybody else does. We want to see stability in the business. That's probably the biggest item. So even if your sales aren't growing, is it a really stable business? Is the revenue you have relatively recurring? Is that a recurring revenue base? Because you can borrow against a recurring revenue base much more easily than you can over one-time sales, right? You got one really big order, that might boost your numbers. You might need to get financing for that one order, but it might be different, right? You might have one specific financing arrangement for that one order that you need to complete, and then that might go away once that's collected, and then you have your normal operating line for your more regular business or the more consistent activities. And that's probably the one thing to think about as you're financing your business and you're looking at cash flow. The banks are going to look to consistency first. They want to see consistency, and then that translates to reliability for what we can finance. It's hard to finance, very volatile cash flows.
That is interesting. So if you're listening to this and you can borrow against recurring revenue. So for product and service companies, and I don't know if that's a big one of yours, if you can extend out the contracts, that's what we did for one of our clients that actually ended up getting acquired. Is they're a professional service company, but we, instead of 12-month contracts, we got them to, we were selling 36-month contracts. Is that something that does that count as recurring revenue or?
Yeah, most definitely. Think about, it's thought differently, look at like a rent arrangement on an apartment building, right? It's a monthly contract that pays X amount per month for 12 months, or, in a commercial real estate, it's a 5-year, maybe with some annual escalators, depending on who you're leasing to. But it's the reliability of that type of cash flow that makes those value. Obviously, there's the collateral piece that supports it on the other end, but there's ways to mitigate that through financing arrangements for either the Small Business Administration. There's a lot of foundations in and around the area that will support or partner with banks to finance growing companies. There's ways to work around that piece, but the main thing is that you've got some consistency and some growth that would sustain the ability to finance you to some level.
Interesting. So thank you for all that. I mean, this is it's making our point, which is one of the points that people, as they're planning, to look towards sales and look towards talent and look towards increasing, especially if they're looking, to leverage a group like yours. But I didn't know that. That's interesting. That to me, what I've heard from you thus far is, consistency comes from cash flow comes from sales. So we got it. So learning how to sell is important. So I want to kind of pivot to the talent bits, because since we're on this topic, is you don't just launch a fleet of banks because you don't know how to close a deal, right? And it sounds like you don't invest in folks that don't know how to close their own deals too. How does someone get good at sales? Like if they listen to this brand new, they just know you and they're like, I wonder how I get good at this.
At banking?
No, it's selling.
In particular? Well, in selling, I think you're more of an expert than I am on that. I mean, I think to me, people like to bank with they know and they trust. And I think generally speaking, that's probably any interesting industry is, finding ways to build relationships and being authentic is the overused term, but, just being real about, okay, here's what I'm doing and making sure you follow up and you're effective in your sales. I think that's kind of the key item. People like creating value. So, they like to buy from people that create value for them. So find ways, whether that's expertise, that's reliability, maybe that's price. There's a lot of different ways that you can sell and areas that you can sell. Know what you sell best. You can be the lowest price person. That's, the Walmart strategy, right? You can be the process. You better have the background and the support metrics to do that if you're going to lead on price. Or you're going to lead on value, or you're going to provide expertise that can be really differentiating. And I think in our business, that's kind of where I try to create value. Is I want to provide expertise where I can on, financing, on, financial management, operating a bank in our size. You're moving money every day. There's a lot of things you learn through that process, or things that are maybe, could be of value, or you're seeing a lot of different businesses kind of coming through the bank. What kind of value can that be? And being able to provide that and break that down in a way that, helps our customers, I think is a way that we can stand different than other banks. And that's where a relationship with the banker makes a value. Now in sales in general, I think a lot of that can be transferred into banking and out of banking from that matter. I don't think if you're a good salesperson, I think you can be a good salesperson in many industries.
Well, and
hopefully
it was a fantastic answer, man. As always. But I'm going to take it a step further because there has to be somebody listening right now, and take no offense to this. I know one of the ways you guys stand out. So I'll give you a little carrot. I love your blog. If you guys have not checked out, I'm not kidding. Like it's one of the blogs that I actually follow, that I make time to check out. Like the last one you had, which was entrepreneurship by acquisition article. I just thought that was great. It was so well written. Anyway, you guys got to check that out. I digress. Point is that we work with a lot of, how do I say this the nicest way possible? A lot of over commoditized businesses where the relationship and how you build you just mentioned a second ago, providing extra, like your blog. I think it's fascinating. I like it. I know you guys are always around. You're always available. I can text you on a weekend. Now, I don't recommend guys doing that because Andy will probably stop being friends with me if everyone starts texting him, but you're always available. So I guess I probably answered it for you, but I would love to, for all of our fellow, and I'm including myself, there's a lot of trainers and coaches in the world that are going to overcome commoditized business. What is your advice to them? Because banking, let's be honest, there's a lot of banks, right? What is your advice to them on here's how you stand out? Here's how you create distance between you and the other bank or whatever real estate agent or whatever their business is. Because you guys
Well,
have
I
mastered it, in
think
my opinion.
no, I think in my business, when in a dollar is a dollar is a dollar. So, the value of the dollar doesn't change. The difference is in how you provide that dollar and making sure that you're providing it in a way that meets the needs of the borrower. One of the challenges that you see in banking is I think they've tried to, force everybody into a certain subset of rules. So, creativity has been lost on the industry, particularly in the large banks, which that ultimately leads to a broad frustration amongst borrowers and a bad rap. So what we try to do, and part of it is speed. Getting responsive quickly, trying to meet the needs of what people are looking at now. We're not always experts in that, but we certainly try to do it as quickly as we can and get to either a yes or no quickly so that you can get back to doing your business. Those are the types of things, trying to think a little bit more creatively around, a proposal. Say you're looking at something and, can I do this deal? Well, you can do it, but maybe we have to pledge this or refinance that, or kind of work through a plan
to
allow for it to succeed. I mean, it's basically trying to be more proactive around what is the borrower trying to accomplish. In our case, what's your client trying to accomplish, and how can we play a part and make that more effective, and at least make a proposal around something that could be workable now. You might like what we propose, you might not like what we propose. That's up to you to make that decision. We're just trying to provide an option in an efficient way, so that you can, decide if it's something you want to do, and we can help you do it. And then the next deal, a lot of times once you've done one deal, it makes the next deal that much quicker because we know the person you are, we know how you work, we know how your performance has been, and it's just, in a smaller bank like ours, you can move a lot faster than the large banks because you basically start from square one again. You got to tell your story all over again.
Yeah, I bet. Oh, that was great. I love how the approach that you've brought to kind of this business. And I had a question in my head, then I popped right out of it because I was just like, do you ever lose yourself in a song? Like I play in our church band. I play bass actually in our church band. I'm a guitar player, but they needed a bass player. So, and the other day I got like lost in the song and I was like, whoa, I totally whiffed on. And like if you miss a note on a bass guitar, the whole church feels your mistake. It's like everyone's like, ooh, that wasn't supposed to be an A. Anyway, so I lost my train of thought on the question, but I kind of want to go back to some things that you said. Like, when you guys get it, let me just ask it, and I'll ask kind of a double question. Do you guys get in a lot of dog fights? Like when I was selling software, no one just went, yep, I'll just take that $3 million software package. We had to go through RFPs, which I hate, and other stuff. But do you guys get in a lot of dog fights, or is it once they're in the door, you're pretty probably going to close that deal?
No, it generally, I look at in our business, it's usually there's up to 3 proposals at any time. So,
Really?
you're usually seeing,
wow.
It all depends. The goal is always to be the first one they call. They got a deal. That means you served them well the last time and you effectively worked. But, usually if we're picking up a new client, it's not because, they haven't checked with their current bank, right? So they'll go to the current bank and they'll get something back they don't like, or maybe they think it should have been a little different, or maybe they didn't get enough value in the proposal they got. So then they'll give us a call and say, okay, Andy, how can you help me out? Or, I'm wondering about this. I've been talking to my banker, or, I'm going through the hoops over at, Wells Fargo or US Bank or one of the large banks, and I feel like I'm just getting lost amongst, the many. Can you get something done with me or for me? And then that's when we can kind of step forward and say, yeah, here's how we do it. I think that's part of it. And then, the third one is usually if there's, they're shopping the deal and they're just looking for the lowest price. A lot of times you see that on real estate deals, in all truthness. You've got this apartment building, 12-unit apartment building in Minneapolis, what's your rate in terms, and those are a little bit shopped, a little bit more aggressive. Now, if it's a rehab deal or, there's something that requires a little bit more knowledge around the product market fit, that's usually where, we can be a lot more creative because we know our market's a little bit closer, and it's not just a matter of, a stabilized property. So we can look forward and say, okay, that's what we think it'll rent out for. And, here's what we think, once it's remodeled and fixed up, what that might look like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it made a ton of sense, man. That's I wasn't going to go down this way, but I kind of want to continue this because there's got to be listeners that are dealing with legacy, meaning, like you said something very interesting. You said if they'll go to their bank first. So I didn't even think of that in your world of getting. I had no idea that 3 proposals per. That's amazing. What am I doing wrong? I should just call you guys and like, good enough for me. But no, that's technically true. But can we keep going on this legacy thing? Because I actually didn't know that. I thought just you call your banker, you do the deal, and I didn't realize they were shopping. So when you're taking on a legacy, do you know what that means? Sorry, a legacy would be I'm banking with Wells Fargo. I've been banking with Wells Fargo for 15 years, and then I call you up, right? Is that an opportunity? Like, do you like that opportunity better, or would you prefer that they're already like you're the legacy? And they're shopping out. Like, which one of those deals are you going to win more often than not, and why?
The one that's already with us will win more often than not because they've dealt with us and worked with us. I mean, the reason why you would go back to the first bank and then start switching, you didn't feel like you were treated fairly or there was something wrong. The big challenge, those are opportunities for us because not only can we hopefully build a relationship and win that loan, but hopefully get the depository and the more larger relationship from that. So that's a good, new growth. If you look at it from a sales cycle, I mean, no business can survive if you're only servicing your legacy clients. You need to have new customers coming in and new people doing more things. So, from our standpoint, we're always trying to get new clients in and getting multiple new clients in on top of servicing our existing clients because the natural order of things in banking is that you start out a borrower and then by the time you retire, you're a saver. I mean, if you do things right, you should be borrowing as you're growing. And then, as retirement comes, you're moving your assets more into cash and or stock investments or something more liquid. And so that's kind of how patterns go. So you have people in the different life cycles as they're moving through their business life cycles or, talk about the entrepreneurship through acquisition. You buy a company, you're going to lever up and you're going to have a lot more debt when you first buy it than you are once it's stabilized and kind of more on a consistent basis. So, we're always looking for those legacy assets in terms of, some of the banks around us, because we need them, to win them into our own fold. But, we get a lot of our business, 90% of it, in terms of clients or people that are existing clients or referrals from existing clients. It's still a big, large share of what we do every year.
When these people are coming to you for taking a loan, we talked about cash flow being important to get the loan. What are they generally investing it in? Like, have you seen people invest in learning how to sell, in beefing up marketing and or sales? Like what are they generally, what's the most consistent thing you see people take money out for or borrow?
Well, outside of buying a location for your business, you see these days, you're seeing a lot more equipment requests, right? So, when you labor or talent shortages, people are buying equipment to try to more effectively manage their talent pool. If you can invest in this productivity app, software, equipment, maybe I can, get rid of one person, or maybe the more likely the case is that then I don't have to add people as they grow. So if I implement this software, then I don't have to add 2 or 3 heads, as my business goes from 5 million to 10 million, right?
Right.
That's kind of where you're seeing more of that investment. But a lot of the stuff we invest are your traditional, accounts receivables, inventory equipment, kind of the line of credits from an operational business standpoint, and then your real estate as you're buying things, because that's usually where that recurring stability is financeable, and then they might use that money that we're financing with the line of credit to invest in some of these other initiatives, but that's just them using their capital in their business to allocate in a way that they can generate the best return moving forward.
Right on. When I was carrying a bag back in the day selling, I would always this was my time right now where I would be planning like a business. Now, granted, I was selling ERP software, so I was literally selling to people that actually were having this conversation themselves in house. But I always found that if I could break out that first quarter, that's how I always hit President's Club, is because when everyone else is going on ski trips or whatever, taking their long holiday, I'd be hustling so that when the summer came, I could close up and have a nice little break, unless there's accelerators, which then I would try and achieve. So this is probably, I think you only have time for this one or maybe one more. I want to be respectful of your time and the audience, but big question for me as we wrap in sort of planning, like when should revenue growth, like focus sales in metrics, when should people focus on accelerating that? Should they wait? What have you seen in the success of, you said kind of hockey stick companies, a lot of the companies that have trajectory of growth? What are some of the tips and tricks or the kind of the repeatable things that you've seen? What do they do right? And what can our listeners apply to as they plan for next quarter?
So I'm a big believer in understand your input costs, right? So if you know how much it's going to cost you both on a fixed level and then in a marginal level. So, I mean, wow, you're talking to a banker and he's saying, know what your costs are before you really step on the gas pedal, right? But the reality is that, I mean, I've seen so many really strong companies where they understand for each incremental dollar of revenue, how much it's going to cost them. And they know, okay, if I go and seek out, that extra $1 million project, or, just start, maneuvering my price point so I can drive more volume, they know how to move those levers so that they can really push the sales. But sometimes in the early stages of your business, you're just trying to get understanding of where those sales are coming from and what that might be so that you can prove out your viability over the long run.
Yeah.
So you don't have time to spend on that input cost because you're just trying to drive sales, to get to that minimum viability scenario. And then once you kind of get to that point, and I think it's establishing what that next level is, because if you know your inputs, you know how quickly you can push down and how hard and where you should be pushing, at least from where you think you can drive profitability to the overall organization. And I'm a huge capital allocation junkie in terms of investments, business management, that kind of thing. I think that's pretty keen thing that a lot of people do, and I kind of ascribe to it as much as I can myself.
Can you take that a little? I'm gonna go a couple more minutes if that's all right. Just a little bit more on that, because salespeople, people that are founding businesses, they start making money, right? There's just not enough people that are saying, hey, here's what your money should work for you. You just worked really hard for that. Could you just go down that trail a little bit? I know Gary is probably we want to be respectful of your time, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Like in terms of once you kind of built up capital, how do you deploy it?
Yeah, because there's a lot of sellers on here that are making good commission, and this could be, or founders that are having a banner year because of whatever reason. We see a lot of founders that put it back into their business, which is fine, but maybe there are other advice that you can give someone listening right now as to how to get their money work for them.
No, I think it's super important, as you grow and say you start to really capitalize and start to earn money, is that to really think about your business in terms of what is that expected return in the near term and long term, and what I think I can manage, and how much should I let the business drive its own capital growth, and how much should I be reinvesting? Because in some instances, when you're knocking out of the park and you're driving huge returns on invested capital, it makes sense to plow back in the business. There might be other scenarios where, hey, if I went and funded this other project, in 5 years, all of a sudden I got two businesses that are really excelling, or in some really smart cases, there might be some tax advantaged ways that you can, be investing in something that's maybe alongside your business that will help, from a tax standpoint. So that there's a lot of different tools out there. From an individual level, I'm a big believer in always maintaining a fair amount of investable assets outside, just from liquidity and solid footing standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
But again, not something you would be surprised to hear a banker say.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I know we've had these conversations offline, and for those listening, if you guys are looking for any sort of real estate, which we like to do, these guys are they're the best in my opinion. So, I know we've had this conversation. I just figured we never talk about anything other than we always talk about earning money through sales. We rarely talk about how to put it to work, which maybe I'll have you back and the whole episode will be on that. But I just thought for the listeners' sake. All right. Gary's giving me the red light, but I got one more question. This is kind of open-ended, so you can go. Right now, as everyone's putting together their 2022 plans, they're putting together, I'm going to go to the gym more, like all these little things. What sage advice could you give these folks to potentially have their greatest year yet? And this is totally open-ended. So it could be personal, it could be professional, whatever.
To me, one of the biggest things I think that I create value from is carving out time for yourself. Especially in today's environment, there's a lot of, stresses, a lot of variability, things that are driving people, anxiety levels to the moon.
Yeah.
And so take some time where you're not scheduling meeting after meeting after meeting, use that extra hour. And you can do this personally, for business. Likewise, I'm a strong believer in that you shouldn't have meeting to meeting within your company. You should have times available for people to do their job, and then also for you to do your job, which is to think about your business and think about your sales plan, think about your goals and how you're going to execute against it. Because if you spend too much time just running, sometimes you're running at things that aren't moving the needle. Again, trying to think through, time as a form of is a resource, and how do you use it? Taking a few moments to think about your own day and think about your planning. I think people need to do more of that, because I know a lot of people are stressed because they go day to day at work, and then they chase kids, they chase other work events, they chase other options. They don't take enough time just to step back and be grateful and just think about what you could be doing better yourself to excel or hit your goals.
Love it. Sage advice, man. Way to close out the season, the year, if you will. So I know that you're active on Twitter. Where else can people find you, support you? This is kind of your commercial time. If you want to share that with us.
Yeah,
please.
no, at Schornack on Twitter. That's my main social vice. In terms of social media, I'm also on LinkedIn a fair amount. That'd be number 2. I think those are great resources, but I'm always available via email as well. Schornack@flagshipbanks.com. But, I really appreciate you guys having me on the show. It's amazing what you guys are doing, and I wish that you guys continue to do that in the new year. So pretty excited to continue following and supporting you guys as you do that. So
absolutely.
Pretty excited.
Thank you for that. And thanks for being on the show. Closers, light it up. Give Andy your love and support, because these guys are doing the right things the right way in our community. So thanks for being on. And closers, that's it. That is this year. We obviously we got season 5 will continue into the new year. But if revenue growth is our top priority for you this year, or sorry, the next year, coming year, I should say, definitely check us out at closersmedia.com or hit me up directly, Mikolai@closersmedia.com. Happy New Year. Cheers. All right. So what do we think? What'd you learn? Well, if you like that, check out coffeeclosers.com for upcoming episodes, recordings, and more. And don't forget to check out our sponsors. Each one has been hand-selected. They are best in class. Until next time, we'll see you at the next Coffee and Closers. Cheers.
Come on, live a life we love. Gotta live, I said live a life we love.